And we are back once again here live, Prepper Talk Radio here at the K-Talk Studios in Salt Lake City. And we're happy to join you once again on this Friday afternoon, which I'm so very much looking forward to.
Friday morning.
I did say afternoon, didn't I? Thank you, Scott. It is Friday morning.
Unless you're a farmer, in which case it's late afternoon.
Maybe that's the case, is I get up so early some days that it feels like afternoon by the time we get here, right?
Well, and for me, it's still baby nation,
That's
so
true.
it's all relevant to whenever I was woken up last.
So it's just
true.
blur.
It's a streak of crying, of feeding, of pooping and peeing, and then that's just me. Then the baby's, another question.
Welcome to the real world, Scott. Because that truly is a real world, right there, listeners. Am I wrong?
Oh, it is a real world. It's an amazing wake up call. We talk about prepping all the time. That's what the show's about, right? Well, certain life events you can practice for, you can train for, you can study for, but you don't really know how you're going to respond or how you're going to maneuver and do things during those traumatic experiences.
I was going to say it's
right?
maybe a little hard to go borrow a baby, right, and experience.
Yeah, you can't just walk up to
some parents
the
would
grocery store,
probably
pick
happy
one
to
out
do
for a
that,
week.
right?
You can't. Yeah, you can't really. You can dry run it for an hour or two, but you can't test it for a month. And I'm 6 weeks in, which is insane that it's already been 6 weeks, and it's a different challenge.
It'll be 6
every
years
day.
before you know it.
I don't want it to go that
to
fast.
the time warp known as parenthood.
It's cool.
That is absolutely correct. I love
It
that.
is.
It is a
It
time
is
warp.
awesome.
And the other voice you're hearing here is Jeff Kirkham of Readyman. Thanks for joining us again.
Hey, thanks for having me.
And Rats Tourniquets.
And Rats Tourniquets. And what else? I mean, let me stop first. We want to acknowledge our sponsor, Survival Medical, survival-medical.com. The only first aid kit tougher than nature. Go check them out. So, Jeff, what's going on? What do you got going? I mean, I know you're always busier than most of us.
Yeah, well,
what do you got going on?
It's pretty much nonstop. We've got Readyman is full steam forward. We're up to about 450 tutorial videos in the subscription area of the page right now. We've done over 100. We've actually done over 100 live shows now on our Facebook page.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got over 100 hours of content or video content.
Go check out the one on Silver.
Stuff. Yep, go check out the one on Silver. So we have the Ready Man open Facebook page, and then we have the closed Facebook page, which is the Ready Men. And then also I do a live show with Funker 530 where we dissect and talk about combat footage, film footage that's come back from the war in Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, and some other garden spots in the world. And so we get in there and talk about it. But so we're doing that, and we just came out with a new backpack for it's a fast access bag, which is really cool. That has been real popular with a lot of police departments.
That's
and,
cool.
Regular folks as well. We designed it to fit around the CZ Scorpion, which is a little submachine gun.
I did after I saw your pack. I went and looked at that. I'd like one of those. It was pretty cool.
So yeah, we're super busy, and of course, and we'll talk about it a little bit today. Is we're gearing up. We've got the Ready Man Challenge is kicking off.
I was going to ask you about that this weekend
with the two other gents that are sitting here with us.
Yeah, kind of like Scott was saying, is like he's trying to prepare for having this baby, right?
Well, you get 9 months, right? Roughly.
Yeah.
But it's always different than what you expect, and so tonight's going to be exciting because we're gonna meet up at 4:00 and we're gonna run through probably 24 hours.
24 hours.
Yeah. This is I'm so geeked out, excited for this. When you asked me last week if I could do this, I was like, and I'm looking at my calendar. I'm like, crap. I'm like, honey, can I please? It's not playtime. It's training.
That's right.
And she's like,
I need to do this.
You work really hard. You should go do that. And I'm like,
well, see, I had to rearrange the entire fathers and sons outing for me to be here. So
wow.
No, it got canceled. So
oh, geez.
I kind of got lucky. Well, I said lucky. I don't want to say that because my son and I would have had a good time. But fortunately, I was able to join you. So
how old is your son?
He's almost 10.
Wow. Well, why don't you bring him?
I didn't think about that. I thought it'd be a little too tough for him. He's a little fragile.
Well, we need to work on
No, that's a
making
good
him
idea.
anti-fragile.
No, absolutely.
Toughen that boy
I'm
up.
working on it.
Get him as tough as his papa.
I'm going straight from the Readyman Challenge to my wife and the boys are up camping.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll go.
Oh, really? Okay.
From
Nice.
that up to go camping with them. My guys are just little guys, though. I mean, they're like 5 years old.
They're hilarious. They're hilarious.
I still haven't met those guys, but every time I talk to Shane's just like, oh my gosh, they're so funny. They're so full of energy. They're crazy. They're awesome.
You should see them. You should see that. I've got a buddy of mine that just moved here, and he has 5 sons. And,
Holy.
So his 5 sons get with my 2 sons, and they're all about the same age. And I call it the Manhattan Project of energy because I'm pretty sure they're splitting atoms when those guys are running around. It's nonstop.
Yeah, I know what you mean there. But yeah, I've got 4 girls, so a little different that
Different
way,
kind of
obviously.
energy.
But absolutely, it's
more volatile.
Sits off a bomb.
Girl energy is more volatile than boy energy. Boy energy is always
Pretty
combusting,
focused.
right?
It's
It's always bubbling over. It's always going a little bit nuts. Girl energy, it'll go dark, and then it'll explode, and that's what I experienced growing up. I have one of my best friends in life is my sister. She wasn't my best friend until she was married. Until then, she was my nemesis because of that energy crisis all the time. You're waiting for the bathroom. You knock on the door politely. 30 minutes later, you're like, I'm going to poop in the carpet here right in the hall if you don't open the door. Please let me in. I can't hold on to this anymore. And all of a sudden, the door flies open. She's screaming at you, and this hand goes for your jugular, and you're just like, self-defense mode goes on, full-on fight. I mean, it happened occasionally, but it happened. And that was when it would go from, you hear her Backstreet Boys New Kids on the Block, which are in town today. They're playing on her radio in the bathroom. So all of a sudden, the door flies open, and claws and fists are going everywhere. It was incredible. So girl energy, and now that I have a little girl, it kind of humbles me quite a bit. My left hand's shaking a little bit as I talk about this. She's going to become a teenager someday.
Oh, yes, I know that.
Holy crap. That makes me nervous. But I'm hoping that we can get her trained to work with those types of energy crisis situations.
She's got your head, so I'm sure she'll be fine.
So
let's talk a little bit about this Readyman Challenge. How often
back
do
to
you
the
do
challenge.
these things, and what exactly does it usually
We're gearing
entail?
up. We run them, we try to run them about once a quarter. We slowed down here over the last year because we were really focusing on getting our video library built up for the tutorial stuff. And so now with that, we've got the video tutorial stuff. We've gotten in and we're helping out a bunch with the Boy Scouts, which is a program. I'm an Eagle Scout, and it's a program that we support. So we actually started doing a bunch of tutorial videos for Boy Scouts and Scout leaders. So
nice.
It's, hey, here's how you can do these different skills. So we're just going through the different merit badges so that they'll be available soon. But anyways, so for the Readyman Challenge, we try to do them about once a quarter, and we've gone everywhere from right here in Salt Lake City all the way. One year they went out to Hawaii and did a dive trip with 3 of the guys where they experienced, and the idea is what we want to do. We're not trying to embarrass anybody, but we just want to show the realities of the stress that can kick in. It's like we find over and over again, and we're still learning too. I mean, we're still students of all of this, and we're trying to break the myths that people have. There's like, well, I'll just carry my bug out bag that weighs 100 pounds and I'm going to move 50 miles. And we actually did a whole Readyman Challenge where we tested that, and it was absolutely eye opening to see. It was like just the weight. One, if you don't get out and hike around, it's a completely different new type of exercise.
Yep.
And then hiking around with something on your back is once again a completely new type of exercise. And then walking around with a ton of stuff on your, with a bunch of weight, we saw a couple guys that just crushed them, and they just couldn't, it's like the fatigue. And then once the fatigue kicks in, you start losing some of the higher thought process. So they start making bad decisions, and it's fantastic because how else, you can only learn it 2 ways. One, you can only learn it one way. You've got to experience it yourself.
Yeah.
But if you've seen it where other people have failed, or where other people have had that epiphany moment where they're learning as well, it's all of a sudden it's like, oh, okay, I probably am carrying too much stuff.
But you still got to go out in the field and you got to experience it for yourself.
You still got to, the thing
Even
that
though
we
you've been
say
taught.
over and over again is get your butt off the couch and go out and try some of this stuff. You're not really going to be able to experience anything sitting on the couch.
Yeah, and I've always put a lot of thought into my bags, and I'm constantly tweaking. And of course, in preparing for this Readyman Challenge, I picked a different bag. I'm changing, switching it up, which is, I think, for me, kind of defeating the purpose a little bit, which we'll dig into this weekend, because I want to have that bag that's ready for everything at any time, any moment, which is extremely difficult to do. So this is going to be a fun exercise for me this weekend.
And we actually, with our series, we figured out that it's actually a layers of, like when we talk about defense, we're going to talk about tactical prepping and stuff like that today. But when you start talking about defense, it's rings of defense. You have your outer ring, and then your intermediate ring, and then your inner ring. And so it's like these different layers of defense. Well, bug out system or bug out bag, very much the same thing.
Right.
If you have a vehicle, well, you can obviously carry more stuff.
Right.
But then if you have to get out of your vehicle, so your house is your first one.
Yeah.
Absolute essentials.
And then you've got your vehicle, and then you've got your means of moving after you leave your vehicle, and then you've got, good old-fashioned size 10 walking. And so now all of a sudden, and as you do that,
How did you know I'm a size 10?
He also is a size
Yeah,
10.
Cool.
See, I'm looking at this challenge as an opportunity to really find the flaws in my preparedness, right? Anything that we do ourselves, like any drill that I run myself, I'm preparing mentally for it already because I created the whole drill and I'm knowing what I'm going to be encountering.
Yeah.
This I'm excited about because I have no clue.
Really worried.
The only thing I know of is we're going to get some IR rifles.
Yep.
And we're going to be in the mountains. And a shock belt.
Shock
So I'll feel it when I get shot. But the rest of it's unknown. And so I'm just taking my get home bag. I'm not taking my bug out bag. I'm taking my get home bag.
Yep.
Because it's a 72-hour bag. My bug out bag is far
too heavy.
It just doesn't make sense for quick movement.
Yeah.
It's my bug out bag is basically my wife, my kid, and I all in one bag. I carry it. My wife's got jacked up knees, and so it's a slow walk. It's nothing intense. But my get home bag, that's agility. It's mobility. It's all the stuff that would go in a normal person's bug out bag, and so it's just not.
Yeah, and
it's not going to crush me.
We've talked about this quite a bit on the show. Is that we're more preparing to shelter in place to bug in. So Scott and I, we drive a fair amount, and we find ourselves away from our home. So, and I'm on that same mindset. Okay, well, this is my get home bag. So that's the way I'm going as well.
And absolutely, we see that. We did the bug out exercise where we had folks, and we did it ourselves too. And the big thing that we found was, like, for one, people their bug out location. Well, one, they don't have a bug out location. Yep. They're just saying they're going to bug out,
which is a failure right off the
So it's like
start.
you got to be going somewhere because trekking off and living in the mountains is a myth. I mean, it's straight up, it's a myth. And I know
unless you've grown up doing it,
even
and that means you're out there for half a year at a time or more.
Even then, it's
not going to be done.
Unbelievably difficult because think about it: when the mountain men were going out and they were living in the mountains, they were still trading with the native population that was out there,
solely self-reliant.
And they had pack horses and mules. I mean, they weren't just going out into the woods with a Bowie knife.
Yeah, they weren't wandering off.
They you're talking some serious players that had figured it out, and so oh, by the way, a lot of those guys died.
Yeah,
had a very hard time of it. Anyway,
well, I look at it similar to the miners, right? A lot of people thought they could go mine, and it's just a stark reality change when you go from society living to all of a sudden I'm out in the wild. Alone, it never works.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
No matter what your plan is, it never works alone.
All right, and we're coming up on our break. Thanks for listening to Prepper Talk Radio here. Scott, Shane, and Jeff. And we'll be right back after the break to talk a little bit more about tactical prepping. And kudos to our sponsor, Survival Medical, survival-medical.com. Check them out. All right, welcome back to the show. You're listening to Scott, Shane, and our wonderful guest, Jeff, here from Readyman on Prepper Talk Radio. I guess I don't have to say the name of the show every time.
Heck yeah, dude.
Oh, we love the name. We love the show.
You know, we're going to have our morale patches available here pretty soon.
I was going to ask you, how soon are we going to get those
The
things?
print company the casting's done. They're doing the PVC patches as we speak. They should be ready in about a week to a week and a half.
Very cool.
Nice.
And shipped out, so we'll get you one of those.
Yeah, nice.
Have you
Sorry.
seen the proof of that, Jeff?
No, I haven't.
All right, cool. You're going to have to show
I'll pull it up on our social media. If you want to see what it looks like, go to Facebook, go to Prepper Talk Radio page, and you can find it just by typing in Prepper Talk Radio, one word.
It's our logo there right on the front page there. So, yeah, absolutely. We're excited for that and excited to talk about this topic a little bit. It's kind of a term that I think, let me slow down here a second, survival medical. Survival-medical.com is our sponsor. Please go check them out. And they've got some pretty fun videos. They just came out with a Father's Day video in appreciation for fathers, and I think it's very appropriate. So check that out on their Facebook page.
Yeah, they're the kit that I keep in my get home bags, my bug out bags, whatever you want to call it. That's I've got their backpacker ultralight for my get home.
That's what I packed for this weekend.
In my car, I've got the Voyager. I mean, it just makes sense to have good first aid kits, and redundancy is always great, and especially if you're like me and you're always with a car. You know, you've got room. Utilize that space. I've got extra tools. I've got extra water. I've got extra blankets because I want to be of service to those I'm around. And for me, that's why I do preparedness, because then I can be an asset as opposed to a liability.
That's right. That's what it's all about.
And I think a lot of people who prepare their bug home or bug out bags, it's kind of based on wilderness survival, right? They've got a tent, they've got a sleeping bag, they've got those types of things to start fires and so forth that may lean toward an extended stay in the wilderness, but that's not necessarily going to be the case because we're in a metropolitan area. I mean, we're in an urban area, so we're going to be moving among buildings and not necessarily among forests and wild beasts and having to hunt for our survival. We're going to need different kinds of tools here along the Wasatch Front if we're working along this corridor.
You know, and being able to move is the biggie. You know, so it's when you know, it's like time under tension is the physical fitness term. So all of a sudden, when you've got time under tension, that tension being weight on your back.
Yep.
So one thing that's always asked, I was just interviewed for this thing called the Prepper Summit that's coming out, and
We're excited to see you're a speaker there.
Yeah, as a speaker there, we had a bunch of the Readyman crew or speakers there. So he asked me in that, and actually we talk about tactical prepping a little bit. And one of the questions he asked me is like, what do you think the number one thing that people haven't prepared for? And I was like, without a doubt, people have not prepared for the element of exhaustion. Because now all of a sudden, when you start talking about time under tension, you know, if we can borrow that phrase from the fitness industry, time under tension is like how long are you moving that weight, you know, when you're in the gym getting buff. But now all of a sudden, when we start talking about time under tension, how long are you carrying that backpack? And it's not just physical tension, but it's emotional and psychological tension as well. Emotional tension of, hey, what's happened to my family? Or I have a family member that I'm helping that's sick, and I've got to get to, you know, I've got to get to help. And then all of a sudden we've got the psychological pressure because we're worried about our safety because is there somebody out there? Is there robbers? Is there wild animals? Is there, you know, and it's not just wild animals. We're not talking about like, you know, mountain lions. But one thing that we saw in Afghanistan was, you know, one of the biggest wild animals that we had to worry about was feral dogs. And dogs will go feral pretty stinking fast. And when they're hungry, they all of a sudden
especially when they're in
get
packs,
a little bit of aggressive. Yes,
Yep.
absolutely. They get in packs. They get a little bit aggressive. Now you can chase them away, obviously, but but it's also one of those things. It's just one more thing that's adding to the psychological strain. So that's where I said first and foremost is people are not ready for that time under tension. They're not ready for the pure exhaustion that takes place. And as we get more tired, then all of a sudden we start making less and less rational decisions.
Yep.
And so, and it's interesting is like, you know, I'm looking back about 25 years when I went to Ranger School. And the whole point of Ranger School is not a commando school. Ranger School is a leadership school.
Yep.
And so, and they run you down to, you're so tired that you literally can't think straight, and you're still running operations, still trying to make those decisions. Yeah.
Because you're in a leadership position, right?
They're not simple decisions. They're command decisions.
They're command decisions, yeah. And then you couple that with you're starving because they restrict your caloric intake. So you're starving. So like literally the only thing you can think about is I'm tired and I'm hungry. And it's usually I'm hungry and I'm tired. And so, and you're trying to work with a whole group of other guys, another 20 plus guys that are in the same exact condition as you are.
And
so
you're
now
taking turns having to be leader.
And you're taking turns having to be a leader and motivate these guys and pull off, you're running ambushes and, patrols and all of this stuff. So now that I think that's that one element that for prepping that people miss is just the element of just exhaustion. And that's why we believe over at Readyman, community is so, so, so important. You can't pull security 24 hours a day. Guess what? You flat out.
You can't even pull security for 8 hours a day effectively.
It's unbelievable.
It doesn't work.
I mean, I think the study that just came out said within 24 hours of lack of sleep, you have the mental abilities of a psychopath because you're so instantaneous, you're so knee jerk, you're so not thinking things through, you're so living in the moment just because of the pure exhaustion that's on there. Now, for a bunch of guys, that's why we tell guys, get your butts off the couch. Now, all of a sudden, put a workload on there, so you're not used to work. You're not used to walking around. And all of a sudden you're hauling weight, so now you have that physical time under tension that's adding to that exhaustion. Boy, I'll tell you what.
And that's where conditioning really comes in, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
That's where all this training really comes in. And that's kind of where I wanted to lead is, it's really about the word tactics, right?
Yeah.
I mean, tactics is maybe a military word. I mean, where did the word tactical, like all those preppers, we like tactical stuff, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of, a lot of things are promoted that way, like the tactical flashlights, it's a tactical handgun. Where all this
that's because it's
clothing.
A sales word anymore. I mean,
exactly.
We're stripping it of its real meaning.
The term comes from, so you have strategic and you have tactical. So strategic is when we talk about intercontinental ballistic missiles, ICBMs. That's a strategic weapon because we can reach out, we can dominate, we can control the world. When we start talking about aircraft carriers, that is a strategic weapon. Or when we talk about the president makes some trade deal with country X or whatever, that is a strategic trade deal that's going to help. So then when we shift focus and we say tactics and tactical is at the ground level. So that's like you and us sitting in this room. It's personal. Yeah. So all the way up to, you can say tactical can be up to, like the platoon company size. And you could argue you could even get a little bit bigger than that. But then it starts going into the strategic. And there's most certainly a smearing of the lines between strategic and tactical. We could be doing a tactical operation that could have strategic implications. So what I mean by that is all of a sudden we're sending a patrol out and we have 3 Americans get wounded because it's an IED. That is a tactical operation, but we have strategic implications because it's reported on the news and everybody knows about it. So strategic is big picture. The easiest way to think about it is strategic is big picture, tactical is little picture.
So how do we apply? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, so in preparing for this, when you gave me the idea a few days ago, I was like, what the crap?
Yeah.
Because for me, prepping is planning, right? It's strategic planning.
Yes.
But it's a lot of different plans. And so tactical, I go back, okay, what is tactile? Because that's kind of more the origin of tactical, right? Tactile is to touch, to be in contact with. Then you go to tactical, research what tactical means, and you're absolutely right. It's a small part of the big picture. It's an instance or a clustering of instances where it requires a lot of planning.
Yeah, it's carefully planned actions is what tactics are, right? I mean, and that's what us preppers are doing all the time. Or at least that's the idea, is to carefully plan for what may happen.
And that's where, like strategically speaking, you could say that if I'm a prepper and I'm a prepper in preparation of something. That's the strategic view is I need to prepare for something. Then at the tactical level, it's I need to prepare for flood, tornado.
So we could say maybe
a flat tire.
Strategically, we want to bug out to a particular location.
Yes.
So that's our strategic plan. But it takes tactical planning and executing
and tactical
tactics
preparation. So so you've got the planning and you've got the preparation. And you've probably learned this in boot camp, but really learned this hardcore in Rangers Ranger School is you do it and you do it again and you do it again, and you're not doing anything special. You're doing something specific, right?
And the whole point is you plan and you execute. You try it. Did that work? Oh, that didn't work. And then you plan and you try, because that's one thing that we learned, especially in scenario based training. And then all of that gets changed when all of a sudden the war kicked off, and then we started trying stuff that we had done in training in real life over in the war, and it was like, ooh, that doesn't work. We need to make sure that we change our tactics. And so that's where it's so important to get out there and test this stuff. I saw the military from the 80s all the way up until just retired a few years ago. And the changes that I saw was amazing, because I saw the Army go from peacetime to a little bit, some small conflicts, nothing real big. Desert One happened, so that changed a little bit of stuff. That when we fell right back into the peacetime, all the way leading up to, full-fledged war like what we had on Iraq and Afghanistan. And what was interesting was a lot of the stuff that we used to do early on, we don't do any of that stuff anymore, because it was like, whoa, that didn't work. But at the time, it made perfect sense. But we had, in many instances, we had so overanalyzed stuff that it was like, holy cow, this, and I think prepping's the same way. Is like, you can so overanalyze your bug out that you're just carrying 100 pounds. We have a saying in the military: 100 pounds of lightweight gear still weighs 100 pounds. And you've got to lug that crap around. I'll tell you what, it will grind you into dust.
So what is the average weight of a pack you carry in training?
Well, it depends. So that's where, like on a heavy assault, so like, you figure Afghanistan or something, on a heavy assault, I weighed 350 pounds.
What?
350
you and
pounds.
your pack?
Me and my pack.
Okay.
I was 350 pounds. But I wasn't walking a long way, and that was going in as like, hey, we're probably going to get into a gunfight.
Is it like a 2-week sit-up there? Is that kind of what?
No,
that's a short duration.
Was a short duration. That was
a day, 2 days?
An in and smash and out. No, we're talking that was
hours.
Like hours.
Okay.
Hours. Wow. All the way up to, we'd go out on 10-day plus running patrols out on the border in Afghanistan. And so now all of a sudden we were packing somewhat heavy. We were in trucks, but walking up those mountains on the border of Afghanistan and Pakistan, guess what you're not carrying? A lot of heavy stuff, because bullets are made of lead, so you have to carry those. And you got to carry your med supply, and you got to carry water. And guess what? That's about all you carried.
So, for perspective, what was your walking weight unequipped versus the 350 pounds fully equipped?
So, like me standing here in t-shirt and boots, I was averaging about 220.
Okay.
225. So I was carrying. So to answer your question,
roughly 120 pounds on a heavy assault.
Yeah. So.
And then on the other example, what would you say your total pack weight is?
You can go all the way up to 55 pounds, but we even stripped that off to where I'd be surprised if I was at 25 pounds.
Okay,
awesome.
Because walking up mountains, I can't overemphasize enough.
Oh, yeah.
And because of the unit I was in, like the ceramic sappy plates and stuff like that, gone.
Well, I think we can all kind of relate to this in that when we first start like scouting, we first start going on our first backpacking trip, right? We carry probably way too much. Yeah. And I've seen way too many examples of people say, "Oh, I'm going to carry this big, huge knife, and I've got, a lot more than you actually need." And then as you are more experienced in hiking and become older in scouting, then you realize I just need to go light, because this weight is killing me, and it makes it no fun.
Yeah.
I mean, it really makes the trip no fun. And just to have those supplies to set up camp, you spend very little time at camp, so you realize that this doesn't make any sense. And
I think too, you got to remember if you're bugging out, you're bugging out to go somewhere.
Yes, you have to have an endpoint. You
got to have an endpoint. You got to bugging out, whether that's your dad's house or your sister's house or brother's house or your buddy's house. You got to have an endpoint. And so when you talk about bugging out, then all of a sudden, again, we go back time under tension.
Yep.
The less time you're exposed out in the wilderness, the safer you're going to be.
Hey, let's take a call here real quick and see what the caller has to say. You're live here on K-Talk. Do you have a question or comment for us?
Yeah, I've been listening to this guy brag about his exploits in Afghanistan, and it's always been my position that the U.S. military is extremely cowardly. They're over there killing shoeless mountain peasants, lightly armed irregulars. I was wondering if your war hero wants to engage in a discussion on whether he's a piece of dog crap.
Wow. First of all, our whole focus, this is Scott, our whole focus with this show is not to antagonize anybody. And Jeff has not bragged about his experience in any way, shape, or form. The reason we bring Jeff on, besides the fact that he's just a really good, down-to-earth guy, is because his mindset is about community. His mindset is about helping. And for you to come on and to try to challenge him on our show, we're going to cut you off every time. Because, number one, that's not helping anybody. You're looking for a fight, and you're basically calling him everything you should be calling yourself. And I think that's where you need to have a self-check. Because this show, our purpose is to help people prepare. It's not to incite an argument. It's not to see whose arm's bigger. I don't give a flying flip. The point of the show is to help people prepare.
And I think also, I mean, if I can throw in something there, I was actually one of the guys that was over there helping the Afghans. So I was an advisor trainer. So I was helping to advise and train the Afghans so that American boys and girls didn't have to go over there. For every one Afghan that we were training, we were actually replacing 4 or 5 Americans that were doing that. And so, everybody's entitled to their opinion, whether you thought that was a good war or a bad war. I mean, after X number of years, working over there, I can't think of any good war that's ever come around. You can argue necessity or whatnot, and then we can go back and forth endlessly. But I do believe in the tenet of self-defense, and I would never take that away from somebody. And that's why I really embrace that, John, because essentially what I was doing was helping these guys prepare to defend themselves and defend their country against guys that were, the news is great at whitewashing the horrific acts of what the Taliban and AQ were doing, Al-Qaeda were doing, and now that we see with ISIS. And so, if we can do anything to help change your mind or whatnot, hey, love to. Yeah. But
thanks for the call. Thanks for the comment. We'll talk a little bit more about this after the break. You're listening to Prepper Talk Radio here on K-Talk AM 1640. Join us after the break. All right, and welcome back to the show. You're listening to Scott and Shane here on Prepper Talk Radio, and our wonderful guest, I'd like to bring that down a little bit more, Jeff Kirkham of Readyman. And I think I just want you all to realize why we have Jeff on. He's a regular guest. And he could do the show by himself. I mean, his wisdom, his knowledge, his experience is what we're drawing on, and we really appreciate that. And thanks for coming, Jeff. We
love being here. We're all about, on Readyman, we're all about building the community and helping out as many folks as we can. That's why we do all the tutorial videos that we do, because we just, at the end of the day, I mean, we don't care where you're coming from or what your belief system is. Obviously we don't want to train terrorists or anything, but we don't care, age, gender, race, religion, any of that stuff. We just want
like Mother Nature. Mother Nature doesn't care.
Doesn't care.
Just dishes it out.
That's right.
Just want to help as many folks out there.
We appreciate that. I think that's what draws us all together as friends. Is that desire to help community. Right, that desire to help rebuild after disaster, to help reinforce before a disaster. Yeah. And that's what all of this is for. And I'm really excited for tonight's challenge because it takes all of my training, it takes all of my practice, and all of the gear that I've tried to get proficient on, and puts it to a test. And the only way for us to really understand if this is going to work is to test it, and to test it outside of our normal scope of testing, to let somebody else write the rules.
Right. In training, the big thing that we like to tell folks is, going to the range and going to the range or doing whatever and doing the stuff that you're good at is a lot of fun, and you can high-five your buddies. But real training, you want to get out there and find your deficiencies and find your weaknesses.
Yep.
And you can do that, in any number of different ways. And that's why we're constantly pushing folks is learn new skills, learn new things, try new things, test what you think you know, and then once you've got it, share that with other folks in your community, because we're big believers. You can't do it by yourself. You've got to have your friends, your family, your community, your neighbors that are out there. With modern life, it's so easy to just go through life and not even talk to your neighbors that live 10, 15 feet away. And so that's where we're like, hey, continue to build that community and share your ideas and your skills with folks.
Absolutely.
So when it comes down to tactical gear for preppers, I mean, is that overrated? Is it mainly a sales point, or is there a place in prepping for tactical gear? What's your opinion?
I think so. I mean, boots, again, like having joined the military back in the 80s and then seen, because we're the hub of tactical gear, but a lot of the advances that we see now, like boots that were out in like the 1980s were like two things: very heavy and very uncomfortable.
Yep.
And and you had to go through this cycle. Remember, you guys are old enough to remember you had to break in your boots.
Yep.
And that took forever. And it's like, and so now all of a sudden they've got boots that are like tennis shoes that'll hold up for like, I think they'll be around with the cockroaches after we're all gone.
No break-in time.
No break-in time. And so there's a lot of great materials that have come out from the tactical level, like boots, clothing is another one, belts.
Gore-Tex.
Even something as belts.
That's
Gore-Tex.
true. Gore-Tex started in the military. I mean,
Yeah,
that was the
biggie military application. Yeah, we used to call it LBG, life before Gore-Tex, and and you figure out. But yeah, there's a lot of that, and a lot of these lightweight fibers and stuff that's out now. So obviously, when we start talking about preppers and using that at the tactical level, it's drawing on those lessons learned, and it's not just the mill either, because guess where the mill got a bunch of their stuff from? Guys that are going out there and beating the bush and hunting deer and elk and stuff like that as well. And so, grabbing those all that stuff and kind of synthesize it down. And that's where, again, I keep beating this dead horse of, when you find something that's good, share it with your friends.
Oh yeah.
And so we've got this wonderful thing called the internet now, where we can post ideas and share ideas back and forth. And gear reviews are kind of a dime a dozen, so we can really synthesize down the stuff that we need that works, that's really bomber gear that helps us out.
And I think a big aspect of this is that a lot of this tactical gear has already been used and abused by the military.
Yeah.
So it's proven. Again, kind of exactly like what you're saying. And so there is a place for tactical gear in prepping. However, I think some of us go overboard. Don't you think, when it comes to tactical gear?
I think more importantly is the tactical mindset, the tactical preparations, the skill sets, right? I think that is more valuable than gear. If you have a sharp mind, you can always improvise. You can always find a way to adapt and overcome. If you have gear you don't know how to use, then it's just dead weight.
It's just boat anchor.
Yeah, and that's what most of your typical 72-hour kits that you go find and buy, it's a boat anchor. There's a few things in there that you know how to use intuitively. There's a lot of things in there that are meant for a single use, and then it's garbage. Or it's just designed poorly, and so it doesn't work efficiently, and so you're wasting a lot of weight that you could actually put something in that makes sense.
Yep.
And the number one thing I find with most of those 72-hour kits out there is the bag itself is a little bit better than what you'd get a kindergarten kid, but it's not sufficient enough to carry 2 books to school for your first grader. They're weak bags.
Zippers will break.
Yeah.
1,000 denier Cordura was the rage there for years and years, and now all of a sudden we backed off of that, and it's like, do we really need 1,000 denier Cordura?
That's some heavy fabric.
That is, because all of a sudden your backpack weighs 10, 15 pounds
by itself,
and you haven't even put anything in it yet, and so I mean, it's definitely, and ounces become, we have this thing, or it's like it can be super light. And it should be, because ounces are pounds when we start talking about this. And then all of a sudden we start talking about space. So it's weight and it's bulk. Because you could have a balloon that weighs nothing, but do you want to carry a balloon around with you in the woods because of all
What's
that
the point?
bulk?
Yeah.
So now all of a sudden, like a big pillow or something like that. So it's that bulk and the weight combined. And this is really, and so like the backpackers, again, the civilian side, a lot of backpackers have got this thing called ultralight backpacking, and that's really the rabbit hole at Readyman that we've gone down. And actually, Jason Ross is the one that really has. I mean, he really went down the rabbit hole on this stuff, and so he's down to, I think he's under 10 pounds now, and he can sustain himself for 72 hours, and he's just fine.
That's
and
impressive.
That's shelter.
That is truly ultralight.
super ultralight.
And I think for me, when I put my pack on, it's about 20 pounds. It's really not uncomfortable whatsoever. So to go 10 pounds, that's pretty.
And for me, like, I adjust my pack based on the season as well.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
And I think that's one thing that a lot of people will forget is make sure you're taking the time to plan for the elements that you're going to encounter.
That's right.
The seasonal changes, but also be ready because season can change on a dime. Late April 28th, I'm at the hospital the day before it was sunny. My baby's born and it's snowing. And I'm like, well, okay, winter's back. But if you're caught in the wild in that situation, or you're caught without normal, society, and you're exposure is going to be the quickest killer. Those severe weather changes quickly are what take people out of the equation.
Yeah,
so
it's kind of like what we talk about is like, are you hurt or are you injured? There's a big difference between hurt and injured. And then when we start talking about, survival, it's like, are you uncomfortable or are you dying?
Right.
There's a big difference. Being hungry, we can go for days and days and days without food.
Right.
It ain't fun, and it's not comfortable, but you can do it.
Yeah, you're hurt. You're not injured.
And I think that's where it comes along is that the more you know, the less you need, right? So that's where it becomes ultralight, is where you have that experience. You're out there like, okay, I didn't really need this, so there's some saved weight the next trip I go out.
Yeah, exactly.
So get that knowledge, get that experience, and go out and work with your gear, and then you'll realize. And then I think maybe to the other opposite as well is, like you have this example with weather, right? In the spring, it could be really hot, it could be really cold. So the more you know, the more you need. Does that make any sense?
Could be.
Yeah,
right.
Be.
It can always. It depends on what you're doing. You can always equate it in any different direction. But simple, to me, is always better. Keep it simple. Don't go overboard. I think the tactical approach, tactical prepping, to me, means to minimize, to improvise, but more than anything, to plan it and test it, plan it and test it, plan it and test it, and test all the different scenarios. That's what the tactical side is planning and testing,
absolutely.
planning and testing, and then finding out what is it do I really need in this scenario.
And it's actually, if you do that, it's actually a lot of fun. So now all of a sudden it's not just some boogeyman thing that's going on. It's like, no, this is, once a month I, grab the boys and I go out camping and I try out some new stuff. I try to learn some new stuff, whether that's trying to make fire with a bow drill or set up kind of some new snare and figure that out, and how I do that out in the woods, and then all of a sudden, if you really want to learn a skill, you start teaching it to somebody else. So you start teaching that to your boys or to the Boy Scouts or your significant other, whatever that is, because now all of a sudden when they start asking you those questions, you've really got to think about what it is that you're doing and why you're doing it. And
how many times have you guys bought things that you thought, okay, this is what I need, this is going to fill that need, and then you get out in the field and you use it and like, this didn't work the way I thought. So
my garage is full of
exactly. I mean, one simple example of flashlights, right? Flashlights. I have literally dozens of flashlights.
I've got one right here.
Yeah. Okay, you got a nice little tactical flashlight there.
Little $10 J5 tactical flashlight. I don't like some of the features about it because it's got these weird shapes around it. I don't know what those are for. It doesn't make it flash.
It looks cool.
Shine better, but it's got great grip. It's got a cool clip on it. Things that I need are on it, and it's affordable, right? So to me, it makes sense. It's also very light. I love things like that. They're small. They're easy to use.
There's a lot of items that are out there that when you initial look, you look at them and you're like, oh, that's cheap Chinese, gas station stuff. But then you take it out and you test it out and you're like, whoa,
it works.
Hey, this thing actually works really well.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to add that to my the repertoire of what I've got. And, or replace that with something else. So,
and I think it comes down to like when you were talking about ultralight camping. Some of these ultralight sleeping pads cost an arm and a leg. They're extremely expensive. Whereas you have a simple rolled up foam mat, you spend maybe $10, $20 on the thing. Whereas an ultralight pad costs you upwards of $150, $160.
Yeah. And then when you get out there and test that out, you can find out that there's other things you can do with that foam pad that you can't do with your, super expensive Thermalite that,
And that's
blows
kind
up
of
and gets
kind of
popped
the example you gave of the pillow, where the inexpensive one takes up a lot of space, the expensive one takes up very minimal space, and they weigh about the same. So at that point, it comes down to, and that's kind of a bit of a tactical decision, don't you think, right there?
Sure is, absolutely.
All right, cool.
And that's a get your butt off the couch and go have some fun and try that stuff out.
Go adventure. Get a couple of buddies that are doing the same thing.
Talk to people.
Right?
Yep.
Have one of them throw a scenario at you that the other 2, 3, 4 of you haven't thought about, haven't prepared for. You've prepared for, right? You've tested and you've done everything you can to be prepared for whatever could come. But then have someone throw a scenario at you so that you're not ready, you're not thinking it through before it hits you.
Yeah.
And that'll give you the opportunity to really see if your mindset's right, if your gear set's right, and if your planning is on point. Guess what? You're going to mess up, and that's normal. That's okay.
That's the
Failing
point, that's
is
the point
key.
in training.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Identify. It's like, oh, that didn't work.
Everything in life is about failure. Failure is fun. Failure is what drives you forward. If you're not failing, you're not learning. And that's the thing. It's so often people want to avoid that at all costs. And I'm like, you still need to fail to really understand how this works. And that's what life's all about. And that's why we do this show. That's why we do what we do, is to help people to learn from those failures.
And we want to help make that learning curve as short as possible, save you guys money, time, and pain as well. Thanks, Jeff, for joining us. It was a lot of fun. Always a great conversation, and thank you all for listening to us here on Prepper Talk Radio. I want to acknowledge our sponsor, Survival Medical, survival-medical.com. First Aid Evolved. Go check them out. And hopefully you'll join us next week.